Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. Muhammadur Rasulullahi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Tasliman kathiran kathira. Famma ba'du. My dear brothers and sisters, I think one of the things that has become clear to any thinking person in our society today is the importance of good manners. And that's why many organizations talk about having a code of conduct. What are the right things to do and what are the things which must be avoided. There are codes of conduct. Secondly, there are also in some cases within the organization. In some cases, it's also legally mandated. But even without that, they have a ombudsperson who can be approached when the ideal code of conduct is not being adhered to. Meaning, if somebody is abusing their privilege, if somebody is abusing their position, then you are the person being oppressed is not just left like that. There is a place, there is somebody that they can go talk to. They can raise a complaint based on basically on behavior. And the reason people this has sort of clicked home, and I hope this really spreads like a wildfire, is the fact that people have understood the importance of interpersonal relationships, manners, basically, akhlaaq, how important these are. I think for too long we neglected them in the name of being busy, or in the name of making money, or whatever it was that we thought we were doing, and that resulted in us creating a society which was and is full of misery. And both the good news and the bad news is that the bad news is that this misery is completely created by ourselves. It's not intrinsic to society, it's not intrinsic to life. And the good news is that anything we create, we can uncreate, we can change it, we can recreate it, we can stop it. So that's the good news, that it is in our control. If we want to go back or create, forget about back, but I'm saying going forward even, create societies which are just and which are genuinely open and which are based on truth, not on falsehood. Take, for example, the latest fiasco that is going on, where the European Court of so-called Justice has mandated, has ruled that it is permissible for organizations to suspend women who come to work with hijab, with headscarves. Now, what should have been the case there, because these are societies which never tire of trumpeting the importance of freedom of women, the importance of empowering women, the importance of allowing women to do whatever they want, which practically begins with their dress, what kind of clothes to have, how many or how few clothes, and so on and so forth. They talk about how this is absolutely critical to a free society, to a educated society, to a developed society, blah, blah, blah. And then the highest court of justice rules that no, this is not true for Muslim women. For Muslim women only. Everyone else is free to do what they want. They're free to wear what they want, not to wear what they want. But for Muslim women, laws will be created relating to what you can wear and what you cannot wear. Right? So you cannot wear a burkini, for example, on a beach. You will be physically manhandled by the agents of the state and forced to take it off or forced to leave the beach. And now the court says that you can't even go to work with your head covered in a scarf. I mean, what kind of thing is this? But this is the result of hypocrisy, of societies which are built on hypocrisy, where truth is a joke. truth is a parody, where you talk about freedom, and then this is the freedom to insult, the freedom to cause hurt, the freedom to do whatever you want. And now this is so whatever you want, no matter how destructive it is for somebody else. I mean, this is this could have been the storyline of a mockery, a play which is a parody, a play which is satirical. But this is the actual reality. I mean, that is the tragedy. The fact is, I'm not talking about here a play or a story in a book or something, a fantasy. I'm talking about this is the real thing today. And this is a statement that comes out of literally the final human court of justice that one can go to. So now after that, where are you supposed to go to? The aggrieved women, what must happen to them? So now the reason I'm mentioning this, quite apart from the fact that I want to condemn this openly and clearly and directly, and invite people with intelligence and people who really have good hearts, no matter how they have strayed, to think about one thing and say that what is really the truth? How can you live a life of such hypocrisy? That's my purpose. But apart from that, the reason I want to say this is because all of this boils down to one particular thing, and that is that any code of conduct, any code of behavior must address the values, the ethics, the morals, the beliefs that this behavior comes out of, right? So if you, one of the models that is taught in Anderson Corporation, is what is called am, do, get. So what I am determines what I do, which determines what I get. What I am determines what I do, which determines what I get. So am, do, get. So if I'm not getting something, then I must look at what am I doing, what is my behavior, and then I must see from where is this behavior emanating, where is it coming out of, which is who am I, what am I. In G, we had this principle, and this is one of the things that I really loved about, and I still love about working with GE. When I first joined the leadership development team in 1994, it was what is called the basic principle behind GE values, which is values drive behavior, behavior drives results. Values drive behavior, behavior drives results. So am, do, get, the same principle, which is that if you are looking at a result, and that result is what is in our face, the result is what we have. If you are looking at a result and you want to change that result, right? Maybe you don't like it, maybe it's a good result, but you want to enhance it. So if you want to change the result, look at what got you that result, which is what behavior resulted in this result, right? What behavior was the cause of this result, and then look at where does this behavior come out of, which is the values. So values drive behavior and behavior drives results. Who am I determines what I do, which determines what I get. So for example, if you say, well, I want to have friends who are very genuine, friends who are very loyal, friends who I can love. So this is the get part of it, the result part of it. Then I must look to see what is my behavior towards my friends. How am I towards my friends? So if I am genuine towards my friend, if I am truthful towards my friends, if I am, if I am willing to go out of my way to help my friends, then I will have friends like that. Now, so when I look at this, I'm saying here I want friends like this, but I don't have them. I'm looking now at my behavior, and I say, well, you know what, my behavior is wanting. There is something in my behavior which is missing, and that is that I don't go out of my way to help my friends, or that I am not truthful in my relationships with them. I am play acting, I am being overly formal, or I am pretending to like things and don't like things. that must be rooted. Now, what is the value? What is the am? Who am I? What are my values in which this behavior is rooted? What are the values which are driving this behavior? And those values, for example, would relate to my belief about whether people are trustworthy or not. Can I trust people or not? What is my own confidence in myself? And I say confidence because many times the lack of trust in others comes out of a lack of self-confidence. You feel that somehow you will be hurt if you trust people, because when you trust somebody, to trust means to let go, right? To trust means to allow somebody else to function independently without supervising them, without policing them, without peering over their shoulder. Now, if I am not confident about myself, which is that what happens to me if this person does something wrong, or if this person goofs off or fails, then I will not trust them. And if I don't trust them, then I don't get the behavior that comes out of trusting somebody. I don't get trust back from them. I don't get loyalty from them. This is a classic example of what happens in family businesses, for example, which is my super specialization in family business consulting. And one of the things that I advise family businesses on is succession planning. And the biggest challenge in succession planning is to convince the older generation to let go of the ropes and allow the younger generation to function. They don't do that. All the time they talk about trust and they say, oh no, fantastic, these are our children, we trust them. But if you look at the behavior, there's no trust. And that no trust is based on this fear that if I let go, then they will destroy the business. They will make mistakes or commission or omission, which will end up with me losing all that I created as the business founder. Now, this comes out of where? Real question to ask is, what is your faith in your training? If I have faith in my training, then I can leave the person to be free to do what they want without interfering. This is the classic stance of the great coach. The great coach works works day and night to train the team. But once the team is trained and then the match begins, there is no coach that is on the field, right? The coach cannot be on the field. The coach has to be outside the field. The team is on their own. At that point in time, the coach is only standing there witnessing his training coming into effect. If he did his job well, if he trained them the way he should have trained them, then he will see them performing not only according to the training, but even better than that. Because what they are performing with is the training plus their own natural talent, their own discretion, their own judgment, their own abilities. So if you chose right and you train right, then you will see the right results. And that is the tough part, because if I am going to have to look back at myself and say, what is it that I was doing or not doing which created the current situation, then I have to, that's a hard thing to see. But without that, there is no way out. You have to see that, you have to accept that. Now, this is the issue today. If we look at the world, especially people of my generation or older, one of our sort of favorite pastimes is to complain about the younger generation. We say, children today, they are like this, they are like that. Young people have no manners, they have no consideration, they have no respect, and so on and so forth. And of course, I don't generalize, but to a great extent, this is true. But the real question there to ask is, how did that happen? How did that come about? Because that young person that you are complaining about was in your arms. One day, he was in your lap. Right? You nursed him, you took care of him, you changed his nappies, right? You fed and clothed that young person. And then you find you are very surprised that this young person turned out to be a negative sort of character. I mean, that surprise is very, frankly, hypocritical, if you ask me. Because what is a surprise? What is a surprise? I remember this friend of mine who his son was 21 or 20 or 21, and this is from India. His son was 20 or 21 and wanted to go to study in the US to university. Now, like most traditional Indian families, this family also, the parents were very reluctant and didn't want to send the son out. And that's because they said, he goes to the West, he's going to get westernized, and he will lose his values, and he will lose this and lose that, and so on and so forth. So things came to a head, and one day their guru was visiting. So this father said to the son, okay, let's do this. We'll go to the guru and we'll ask him. If he says yes, you can go, you can go. If he says no, you can't go, you can't go. So they both agreed. Son also agreed. When they went to the guru and they asked him, they said to him, what do you think? This is the father. The father said, my son wants to go to America or wherever it was that he to study, and he wants to leave home and go and live there. And I'm afraid that if he goes there, he will lose his culture. He will get completely westernized. He lose his values and so on. So should I let him go or should I not let him go? The guru gave a beautiful answer. He said, that depends on what you have been doing with your son for 20 years. Right? So your son is now 20 years old. He wants to go, and you are agonizing over this decision. You are contemplating, should you allow it or should you not allow it? He said, that depends on what you did with your son for 20 years. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this is because of this fundamental thing, which is that values drive behavior and behavior drives results. And therefore, we need to look at our values. Now, how are values developed? Now, if you think about that, one of the most powerful ways in which values develop is through storytelling. And I don't mean in some formal storytelling class, but I mean the stories that children hear as they are growing up. What I call family legends. There was a project of mine that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I haven't really had the time to do it. But that project is based on this, which is that in India, for example, we have certain communities which are associated with certain kinds of activities. For example, we have what we call business communities. So these are, for example, the Marwadis of Rajasthan, the Bohris of Bombay and Maharashtra and Gujarat. These are and others. So these are communities which are called business communities. And the reason for that is because almost everybody in that community is a business owner, and very few of them go into professional fields, right? So they scientists and this and that, very few. Most of them are business owners. They are into various kinds of businesses. A lot of them are into trading, much more than in manufacturing. Of course, I am making generalized statements, and so obviously you will find people who are exceptions to the rule, but by and large, these communities. Then you have communities which are called martial communities, right? So you find that people from those communities, you find a large percentage of them in the armed forces, in the military, in police, in the uniformed forces, and so on and so forth. So you have those kinds of communities, and similarly others. So now the question here is why? Why is there this preponderance of one kind of work in a particular community? And my sort of assumption, which I really want to test with talking to people of these communities and saying, can you please recollect for me what were the stories as you were growing up? What were you brought up on? And I think that will give us a very good idea as to why that happens. So you would have probably in the business communities, people would be constantly talking about various kinds of business deals that their elders made, and how these business deals resulted in their pauper to wealthy stories, right? From the zero to hero stories. In the martial communities, maybe the stories they heard, the children heard as they were growing up was of stories of battles and fighting wars and individual combat and so on and so forth. So different kinds of stories build the character of the child, and this is that is the reason why it's so important to tell the right stories, to reflect and tell the right stories. And remember, this thing can have a there's a negative side to it as well. I remember this. It was Martin Luther King Day last year, and I was preparing a khutbah for my Jummah, which was based on Islam's stance on racism, which is anti-racism. Islam has absolutely no tolerance whatsoever for racism, and it's actually actively anti-racist. So as I was preparing my khutbah, somebody sent me a short 2 or 3 minute clip of this little girl, and this girl maybe not more than 3 years old, probably under that, who is being questioned by her mother. So this girl is a white girl, and from the accent of the mother, she seems to be Australian. I can't vouch for that, but from the accent of the mother. So this mother is asking this girl. This girl is she's eaten some cupcakes. So the mother is saying, so who ate the cupcakes? Did you eat the cupcakes? The little girl says, no. So the mother says, who ate the cupcakes? And then the mother says, are you telling me that somebody broke into our house and ate the cupcakes? The girl says, yes. The mother says, you are telling me that this person broke into the house, they did not steal the TV, they did not steal the music system, they did not steal anything, but they only ate the cupcakes. Are you saying that somebody broke into the house and ate the cupcakes? The girl says yes. And then on her own, she says, it was a black man. Now think about that. This 2 or 3 year old girl, and if I am correct in my assessment of the accent of the lady, of her mother, if she, especially if that is Australian, then how many black men do you think this 2 or 3 year old girl would have seen in her life? Like practically nobody. Practically nobody. I've been to Australia several times, and I didn't see any black people. I did not even see the original people of the land, the Australian Aboriginal people. All I saw was quite a number of Indians, and Indians are not known as black people. I saw quite a number of Chinese, and they are not known as black people. And of course, I saw white Australian people. So now this little girl, what chance was there of her having seen a black man? But she's on her own, she volunteers this. He said it was a black man. Now the point I'm making is that this is how negative stereotypes also build up. This is how racism builds up. This is how phobia of anything, whether it is anti-Semitism, whether it is Islamophobia, whatever it is, this builds up through such stories. Take Shakespeare's story of Merchant of Venice, right? The whole character of Shylock, who is the Jewish merchant, and the pound of flesh and so on. These are not just stories, this is part of the English language. This comes from this deep-seated anti-Semitic attitude of the British, which was there for centuries and which still exists. I mean, nobody can deny that is true. I don't want to go into the history of all of this and so on and so forth, but this is something like that. And so also now we are looking at the same kind of attitude, which was against the Jews for centuries, is now against the Muslims. And so you have this ban on headscarves and so on. You have a ban on halal and kosher meat. We are very close to Orthodox Jews as far as our laws are concerned, and also, I think, as far as persecution from different sources is concerned. So people are very, they are not saying you shouldn't eat it. They are saying you should not sell it. It should not be there in the market. So an imposing of a foreign, alien behavior or culture in the name of freedom. So on the one hand, these are societies which trumpet about the importance of freedom all the time, but this freedom is very selective. So I like to say, you are free to believe whatever I believe. You are free to believe whatever I say. You are free to do what I tell you to do. That's the kind of freedom, right? Now, all of this comes out of, to a great extent of it, I mean not entirely, but to a huge extent, all of this comes out of the stories that we listen to, which are told to us consciously or unconsciously. Sometimes these stories are part of the culture. These stories are told unconsciously, but they are extremely powerful. And that's why it's very important to think back when you are looking at akhlaq and you are seeing certain kinds of behavior. It's very important to look back at the stories that you heard growing up, which means these are also the stories that you as a parent are probably telling today to your children. Either, when I say telling, it doesn't mean that necessarily you are the one doing that storytelling. This is happening from your generation. So it is the stories that your children are hearing, maybe from you, maybe from their uncles and aunts, maybe from your friends, maybe from their grandparents. But these stories are the reason for building the attitudes that now you are complaining about. If you are complaining about today the fact that children have no sense of responsibility, think about what kind of stories are they being brought up on. Are they being brought up on stories of aggressive, toxic individualism, or are they being brought up on stories of mutual consideration, of giving to each other, of helping each other in times of need? Which one? It's not magic. It is not something which happens without any reason. There is a reason. A lot of times the reason is unconscious, but the reason is definitely there. So what are these stories that these children are growing up on? Now, let me tell you a story. Imagine, put yourself in this place and listen to this story. There is this little, maybe 5 or 6 year old boy, and this boy is an orphan. His father died before he was born. His mother died when he was about 5 years old, and he lived with his father's father, who loved him more than anyone in the world. And so he showered his affection on him. He treated that little boy, he kept the little boy very close to him. He took him wherever he went. And this little boy was very, very dear to the grandfather. Now, who was the grandfather? The grandfather himself was a great tribal leader. He was not just a tribal leader, but he was somebody who was hugely respected, not just because he was a leader, but individually in himself by the tribe, because he was the result of the preeminence of that tribe in a very tribal society in 7th century, 6th and 7th century Arabia. So this person was a individual by himself individually. This person also was a very important person, and this was his grandson. Now imagine this situation. So this person is going somewhere, and they're traveling through the desert. Now obviously he's a big tribal leader, so they wouldn't be traveling alone. He's got his followers, his entourage with him. It's a fair-sized community that is traveling, and in the evening they camp somewhere. So when they camp in this place, people are setting up tents and so on and so forth. Everything is being done. They're sitting by the campfire, eating their food. When this little son says to his grandfather, he says, "Yeah, Jaddi," he says, "My grandfather, tell me the story of the elephant. Tell me the story of the elephant." Now think about this. This is a child in Arabia. The chance of this child having even heard the word elephant is remote. the chance of this child of actually seeing an elephant is like zero. So what is this elephant he's talking about? So he says, please tell me the story of the elephant. His grandfather laughs and he says, I've told you that story so many times. He says, no, please tell me again. Please tell me again. It's a beautiful story. So the grandfather says, we got this news one day that there was this king from Yemen who had come with a huge army with the intention of destroying us and leveling our city, and most importantly, of destroying the house of Allah. Destroying the house of Allah. He came with this intention that this house of Allah should be shut, should be closed. Not just shut and closed, but should be leveled, should be removed, demolished. So I was very concerned and worried, because we are the people who are the caretakers of the house, and what will happen? How will we protect this house? What will, because we are small, I mean, we have eminence in society, but we are small, we don't have any army, we don't have anyone to help us. So how will this work out? And then one day, our scouts came and they said to us that the army of this king is in sight, and they are within sight of our city, and they have camped. And maybe tomorrow or the day after, they are going to attack. Now, while I am sitting here and trying to, understand this news, my camel keepers come running to me. And they come and they say, Ya Sayyidi, they have stolen our camels. So I say, who stole our camels? The camel keepers tell me, the soldiers of the king from this army. So I said to them, what did you do? You were just standing there watching. They said, yes, Sayyidi, what can we do? We are poor people. We have no weapons. We have nothing. We just have our sticks. And those are soldiers. They had armor. They had, they have swords and they have weapons. And they came and they stole our camels. So how many camels? 200 camels, they said. And that is when I realized one very important thing. And that is that if you are a leader, that if you want to be a leader, you must be prepared to stand alone. Nobody will support you. Nobody will take your back for you. You have to be prepared to stand alone. So I thought to myself that now, if I want my camels back, I have to do something. Obviously, I cannot send somebody else to get my camels on my behalf. That person wouldn't have a chance. Second thing is that I also realized that I could have done nothing. I could have decided, I could have taken the stance that we are looking at two completely disparate parties. There is me alone, and on the other side, there is this king in the middle of his army. So how can I fight? How can I alone fight a king in the middle of his army? So I could have taken the stance to say, well, okay, so Qadar Allah, if this happened, it happened. I can't get my camels back. But if I had done that, what do you think that would have done to my prestige as a leader, as the elder of this tribe? What do you think people would have said about that? That is not who I am. And so I was not going to do that, because that did not reflect me and did not reflect and would not reflect who I am. So I decided to go. I decided to go and meet this king and get my camels back. But there was a problem. And the problem was that it's not so easy to go and meet a king, especially a king who is sitting in the middle of his army. So I thought to myself, what must I do? And then I remembered that this army had elephants. I don't know how many they had. Maybe they had 7 or 8 elephants or something. But the biggest elephant was named Mahmud. And the elephant driver was a guy called Unais. And this Unais was Arab. So he was, I could communicate with him. So I went and I met this Unais. And I said to this Unais, look, this is what has happened. Your soldiers have captured my camels. And I want to meet your king. So can you arrange a meeting? So Unais was close to the king because he was the driver of the king's elephant. And so the king invited me. And as I walked into this throne room of the king, this big tent, and on one side there is this platform on which there is a throne, to my great surprise, the king stood up. And then the king came down from the throne. And he came and met me, he shook my hand, and he made me sit next to him. I was very surprised. Why is this king doing that? I'm the supplicant, I am there to ask him for a favor, and he's treating me as if I am, I know I'm a leader of my tribe, but I don't expect him to treat me like that. But he did. So anyway, I was happy. The king asked me, he said, why have you come? So I said to the king, oh king, your soldiers have captured my camels, and I have come to ask you for my camels. The king started laughing. And the king said, when you walked in there through that door, I was very impressed. I was very impressed with your persona, and I said, here is this person who's a significant person, who's somebody worthy of respect. And so I came down from my throne to meet you. But now, when I talk to you, you are asking me for your camels. Do you know who I am? So I said, yes, I know who you are. Do you know why I'm here? I said, I guess so. He said, I'm here to demolish your house of God, your Baytullah. I am here to demolish what you call Kaaba. And you are worried about your camels? What kind of leader are you? I respected you when you walked in from there, but now I have lost all respect for you. So I laughed. And I said to him, O king, I am asking you for my camels because I am the Rabb of the camels. So I am concerned about my property. That house you want to demolish has a Rabb. That is not my house. That is the house of Allah. That is Baytullah. That house has a Rabb. And that Rabb will take care of his house. That Rabb has power. That Rabb will take care of his house. I don't know if the king understood that or not, but anyway, the king said, okay, take your camels. He told his soldiers to give the camels. I took my camels, came back. Imagine this little child, 6 years old, is sitting there listening to the story with rapt attention. What is he learning? He's learning the essence of leadership. The ability and willingness to take charge, the ability and willingness to be held accountable, the ability and willingness to stand with courage in the face of apparently overwhelming opposition, the ability and willingness to act, to take the first step and walk straight towards danger, looking it in the eye, the wisdom and sense to have a strategy of how to approach that. Not do that in a crazy way, but do that in a way where where the chances, the probability of success is multiplied. The ability and willingness and the wisdom to give the right kind of answer, where you don't compromise your principles, but at the same time, so you don't sort of become sycophantic and cringe, but at the same time, you give an answer which is not confrontative, which is diplomatic without being a lie. These are all lessons. And maybe there are more that you come up with, and feel free to share them. So this little child now says, and then what happened? Then what happened? So his grandfather says, I came back with my camels and I took the key to the Kaaba and I hung it on the door and I said, Ya Rab. He said, Ya Rab, oh my creator, my sustainer, oh my Rab. You know the situation. You know that we are too weak to fight these people. So here is the key to your house. This is your house. You take care of it. Then what happened? Then what happened? Then the sky darkened and the birds came. Birds? What birds? Ababil. Ababil. Swifts. They came and they had 3 stones, 1 in the beak, 2 in their feet. And they threw those stones. They dropped those stones on the army of Abraham. That was the name of the king, Abraham. And it was as if those stones had something in them, because whoever they hit, they dissolved that body. Bodies were dismembered and they were lying there like cut and eaten grass. The entire army of Abraha was destroyed. Now imagine this child who had heard this story when he was 5 or 6 years old, not as a story by a storyteller, not even as a story told to him by his mother or father, but a story told to him by the one who was a prominent part of that story. And that story told to him by this person to whom he was closely related. Imagine the power of that story. And imagine this same child when he was 5 or 6 years old, he hears this story. And now in his 40s, his Rabb Jalla Jalaluhu reveals, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل. The question, have you heard? Did you see? Did you see how your Rabb dealt with the people of the elephant? What is going on in the heart of this child? Yes, I know, I saw it. I didn't see it personally because I was born in that year, but I saw it through the eyes of my own grandfather, who was a part of that story. He is hearing this when he is receiving this revelation now. This is so real to him. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ أَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ فِي تَضْلِيلٍ وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلَ تَرْمِيهِمْ بِحِجَارَةٍ مِّن سِجِّيلٍ فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. Look up Surah Al-Fil, read the tafsir, read the translation if you need to read the translation. And then ask yourself one question. And that question is, what are the stories that you are listening to? What are the stories that you are telling your children? And remember, in our world, the storytellers are Netflix. The storyteller is Facebook. The storyteller is WhatsApp University. The storyteller is the media, is your television sets. The storytellers are your sports channels. These are the storytellers in our world. And remember also, whether that story is a story of great nobility or whether that story is a story of the glorification of self-indulgence, the permissibility, making sin permissible, making sin into something that you start calling your right. Whether it's a story that reinforces obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or disobedience, irrespective. It is a story, it is powerful, and it will change the course of your destiny. It will mold your character in a way that decides your destiny going forward to the end of your life and then to the beginning of your afterlife, for which there is no ending. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the wisdom to tell the right stories and to listen to the right stories, understanding that this is not a value neutral thing, it is not a harmless thing, it is not an ineffective thing, it is the most powerful force to shape character. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.